advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness. Starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage your risk to recovery. And we have done that for thousands of policyholders, whether you're business owners, community associations, or high net worth individuals. We have recovered more than $1 billion for our clients. And we want to make sure that you have the information you can use as policyholders. That's why we do these broadcasts. And today's a special broadcast where we're going to talk about an issue that that we are constantly battling right now for community associations and many of the areas where we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth, particularly in South Florida. There's this urban core that's exploding. There's a tremendous amount of interest in real estate here in South Florida. And with that comes new development projects and how those projects are impacting other existing buildings around. We're going to get into those details a little bit later in the broadcast. But before I get there, I want to talk about a few issues that are certainly should be important. And if you're not tracking and you're not taking note of what is going on in the legislature here in Florida, there are bills being proposed that restrict policyholder rights, that make it more difficult for you to access people that can assist you, professionals, licensed professionals that have to go through fingerprinting, background checks, bonding, testing. All these things are required in order to get certain licenses, and these bills that are proposed that are sitting with the House and the Senate restrict your ability to actually contract with them to assist you with insurance claims. The interesting thing with the assistance of a public adjuster has been proven, absolutely proven by the state of Florida through APAGA's research that with the assistance of a public adjuster at the onset of a loss, you will recover between 500 to 700% more than if you do it on your own. And Value Penguin, as we reported on in previous broadcasts, has noted that 68% of policyholders are complaining about unfair settlements. So you put the two together and you scratch your head and you wonder, is it really about saving policyholders money, which is what this bill or the justification for this bill has been based on in theory. But when you actually look at the bill itself, or you look at the bills that are being proposed, there's nothing about savings in them, ironically. So a little bit different about what they're saying and what they're writing, right? So it's a bit confusing. Certainly, if we translation, we look over at Texas and we look at what's going on with the claims and the situation there, a lot of misinformation about coverage, what's covered, what's not. People are really trying to get back to business as usual. There's been a rollback on restrictions regarding the pandemic and COVID, and I mean, we're ready to hit the ground running, and we're taking a couple steps backwards because our insurance is not stepping up and taking care of things as it should. And a lot of what I'm hearing out of Texas and more every day is about how the claims were reported and how a lot of homeowners particularly were contacting their brokers or agents and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about my claim. How can I get it paid? You know, this is the situation. And based on that information, the brokers themselves are reporting these claims, and unfortunately, insurance companies using that information against them. And it's a great illustration that your brokers do not adjust claims, right? It's a great illustration of it. It's a point I have made many times, both on commercial property, community associations, as well as for homeowners. Your brokers don't adjust claims. They are licensed to sell you a product. It exemplifies this issue. It brings it home for me. Just look at what's going on there. If you look at the complaints and the issues, it's a lot about the initial reporting. Had they maybe not reported all of the issues and just the damages that are recoverable, had they just said it in a different way or used different words that actually get you paid. And also you have people make claims that they shouldn't even be making claims because there is no coverage. And knowing to do that before you actually go through that aggravating process of making a claim and fighting with your insurance company for absolutely no reason when you are in fact wrong. So avoid these issues. Obviously, get the people that can help you. Make sure that they're there right there at the beginning. We are on a big campaign right now. Call us first. Make sure that we are there when you have a loss. Make sure we're there before you even have a claim. Make sure you're there when you're recovering from a claim. We want to be with you through the entire process. We talk about the cycle, right? Once you get that first policy, you are in a cycle. there's no definitive end or beginning to it, right? So it just keeps going, right? You have a policy, you have a loss, you recover the money, you start to rebuild, you get another policy. It's a cycle. It's a constant cycle. And you need to make sure that you're addressing each part of that cycle properly to make sure that you don't in any way prejudice yourself at any time during it. So really important information. Something really, that I hope we're all taking note of is the earlier storm season. That's coming up, obviously May 15th. Make sure we're planning, we're preparing. There's a lot of talk about resiliency. I noted in a prior broadcast about how I was talking with the Miami-Dade County about resiliency and its impact onto existing buildings, which is a fantastic segue into our next guest. But before I get there, I just really want to harp on this situation, is that it's an earlier season, meaning get in early, get your plan put together, talk to your fellow unit owners, talk to your board, talk to your managers at your business, make sure everyone has all of the information they need in order to be prepared for this storm season. It's supposed to be a very active one, higher than average. I know you hear that a lot. Sometimes it culminates into a lot of storms that don't come on shore. Sometimes there are. In like 2017, we saw a lot that came on shore. It caused a tremendous amount of damage. And then the years after that, I mean, the Gulf Coast just got absolutely pummeled. So make sure you are ready. Make sure that you have continuity plans put together. Make sure that you're ready to be resilient. It's really important as business owners, as community associations. It's really important that you're communicating with everyone and getting that information to the people that need it. So let's talk about our next guest. Our next guest has a tremendous amount of experience. Not only the company for which he represents, but also himself. He has managed more than 30 condominium projects. He's representing over $200 million in project budgets. These are big numbers. This is a lot of experience. This is information that you need and from a source that's credible. You guys want to make sure that when you're aligning yourself with people and you're getting your information, that it's from people that have actually been there, that have actually done these things. And our next guest has a master's in architecture degree from Florida International University. He is both certified general contractor and a certified construction manager. These are also incredible credentials. This proves his value that he can bring to your projects. Currently in his role with a company, DSS Condo. I want to bring on James to talk a little bit more about you, James. But I also want to talk about your projects. I want to talk about an important issue that's impacting us here in South Florida. James, why don't you take us through a little bit about DSS, its clients, its services, and how you got started in the business.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us. Much appreciated. We always enjoy the professional exchange with firms like yourself and with individuals like yourself. So again, thank you for that. Construction's always been a really big part of my life. I actually started in the business at a very early age. As you mentioned, I eventually educated myself in architecture. But I actually began performing owner's representative construction management services when I joined DSS. DSS, Development Service Solutions, is an owner's representative project management firm that represents ownership and ownership's best interest when it comes to managing large-scale construction projects. DSS, historically speaking or traditionally speaking, has represented commercial clients, developers, private investors, and we help them take their project from conception to completion and protect their best interest along the way. About 7 years ago, we realized there was a major need for those same services, but in the world of condominium associations particularly. That said, we created DSS Condo. DSS Condo specializes in owner's representative project management services for condominium associations and HOAs specifically. It's a unique environment, therefore it requires a unique service. And the personalities and politics and Florida statutes that come along with servicing these communities is a big part of the project's success. An owner's rep that actually understands how to navigate through these complexities is going to be the association's best bet for a successful outcome.
So, and there's a lot of people in that space. I mean, I've seen people say they do what you guys actually do, and I know that you guys actually do. We've been there with you. Let's just say it that way, in dealing with some of these situations. Sometimes I hear from these associations, oh, we're talking to this person, that person. There's a lot of people that say they do what they do, or what you guys actually do. But what distinguishes you between those that claim they know construction, or particularly for community associations? Because I'd like to talk a little bit. It's very different, and I don't think people have appreciation that, as opposed to, let's say, ground up construction for a developer, a builder. I mean, literally manage the expectation of a board, unit owners, all these managers, everything else. I mean, what is that like for you on a day-to-day basis to deal with?
It's very complicated dealing with condominium projects. Look, it's a fully occupied building. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of personalities and internal politics that go on day to day with the board and management and the residents. Yeah. And managing everybody's expectations is probably the biggest challenge.
Yes.
Anybody that's in the business will probably tell you the same thing. So at the end of the day, what you want is, what the association should want, is an experienced construction manager that's been through the process before, especially with condominium projects. Like I mentioned, fully occupied building versus, let's say, a construction project for a developer, which is a construction site separate from the public. It's apples and oranges. So approaching these types of projects takes a special type of experience. As we say with DSS, experience delivers results. And if your construction manager has the proper experience, especially in the world of associations, you're going to be in good hands.
Yeah, and I've seen you guys in action, and I mean, not that you guys can't do the ground up construction, because you obviously have done that and you have the experience there. Bringing it back to associations, it's just a whole different breed of issues and nuances to it. They got to vote for things. Nothing's ever guaranteed. You got to go through material selections. Just a lot of nuances to it, and something going on right now in our local market, which is even further complicating things, is that you have a lot of new construction. I mentioned it earlier in the broadcast about, the urban core, about the growth that we're seeing, about the new development projects, and the issues that these existing community associations are contending with. And one of those is nearby construction projects. And so I wanted to get some tips from you, because I get asked us all the time, Dan, what can we do? How can we plan for these things better? Like, what should we not do is obviously something that always gets asked almost first. So give us some tips for planning for nearby construction projects. As a construction manager, you know what it takes to build the project next door, and you know what it takes to repair the project that gets damaged by that project. So what are some tips for planning for nearby construction projects, particularly for crane swinging, access to property, building restriction lines, traffic planning, expectations, obviously a big one. What are some of your tips that you have for our community associations that are dealing with these with this strong growth?
Okay, well, I'll approach that crane question from, let's say, the developer's perspective, and let's just say there's a project adjacent to an existing condominium association. When something intrudes into the airspace above a neighboring parcel, it's generally considered a trespass, right? If it interferes with the ordinary use of enjoyment of the land. In some cases, however, it might be considered just a nuisance. If it is considered a nuisance versus a trespass, well, typically damages could be awarded to the property who's getting annoyed from this crane use, right? Versus an injunction being enforced, let's say. So as a developer or a contractor, you really need to be sure your crane is being operated safely, being inspected on a daily basis by a highly reputable and experienced operator, and it's meeting all the safety requirements that it needs to meet. I mean, this is 101, right? It needs to be inspected by an engineer on a daily basis. The crane boom height typically plays a role on how intrusive the overhead use may appear to be. I say appear to be because, look, if it's really high up and it's not really within the typical line of sight of the people on the adjacent property, it might not be considered such a big deal. But if it's low enough then it's going to create a problem. And the same holds true for the transportation of materials and the frequency of these materials going over the site. So with all that in mind, developers and contractors using these cranes in areas affecting neighbors, look, they need to be certain that they have the necessary air rights at the end of the day, and that they properly negotiate any crane swing easements or easement agreements required prior to commencing the work. That's their best bet, and they know this, right? Sometimes they fail to obtain this crane swing right easement from the neighboring property. They can't get in touch with the neighboring property. The neighboring property doesn't want to give them permission, whatever the case may be. If that is the case, they may be subjected to paying some sort of damages for the unauthorized use of that adjacent airspace. If the developer is ultimately unsuccessful, right, at a minimum, they should try to minimize the impact of the overswing, right? Operate the crane safely, like I mentioned. This is going to help mitigate those damages that I was talking about, which could be awarded to the adjacent landowner. And at the end of the day, their best bet is to try to build a relationship with the neighboring property, get to know the people, manage their expectations, tell them what they're going to have to experience, and how they are going to try to minimize disturbance.
Yep.
Have an open line of communication between the point people of both properties, and safety, safety, safety. Because if something does fall or fail, not only could it damage property, which is a big problem, but it could also hurt the people that are actually occupying the neighboring building, which is a bigger problem.
Yeah, no, we have seen it all too often, where there was no communication, there was no expectations, and they just start using the airspace above a neighboring pool deck, where people are out in bathing suits in the pool, and next thing you know, they got a piece of drywall, floating in the pool area. You have Tyvek paper just flying everywhere. Just all kinds of things coming onto the property. And in one particular case, we actually saw large roofing and form nails sticking up on top of the actual surface of the pool itself. So really dangerous situation, something that could have been avoided, some communication, up front. But I always want to tell our community association, while the developer and builder are trying to set your expectations and they're trying to work with you and communicate with you, don't give away anything, because at times when you're sitting down to have that conversation about expectations, whatever else, they're also looking for something in return for that communication or expectation of what's going to occur. Sometimes that's money that they want to give you in exchange for allowing them to do these things. Make sure that if you do enter into those agreements, which I completely advocate against, that you have obviously spoken with counsel, you understand the building code requirements, you understand the liability issues associated with it, and you understand how that implicates and may mitigate any sort of type of insurance coverage you have on your own property if damage were to come from the neighboring project. One of the things I got asked a lot about is access to property. Being that these buildings are being built in a densely populated urban core, a lot of associations are getting requests from neighboring properties to access the property because either of an easement issue or to get to something, or because it's easier for them to lay down material. What's your take on those things as far as accessing property?
Well, again, it needs to be worked out between the developer and contractor and the association, and it typically will be worked out amongst the attorneys of both groups, because the proper agreement needs to be established in order to protect the association properly, protect the association from damage and from people getting hurt in the interim. The appropriate protection needs to be put in place when any of this work is being performed, whether it's being performed from the association's property or it's being performed adjacent to the property and has the ability to fall onto the property of the association. So you really got to cross T's and dot I's for safety's sake. And a lot of that comes down to open lines of communication, working through the details of what is going to take place on that neighboring construction site and how to best mitigate the exposure that the association could potentially have by allowing them to use this space. So it is a really important process, which is the process of establishing what's going to happen and how they're going to deal with the safety requirements around it, and then what could happen if something fails. That needs to be established well in advance, and that's really a job for the association's attorney to get involved in.
No, I think it's all great information, and so top tip for recovering from damage caused by the project. Now we've talked a lot about protecting it, communication, expectation. What are some tips? Like, the damage, we did all that, but it still damaged our property. What are some of your top tips for some of these damages caused by nearby projects?
Well, I mean, they need to get in touch with someone like yourself to establish the damage that has occurred and find the best way to recover the financial means to fix the damage, right? So identifying the damage is key, documenting it very thoroughly.
Big time.
And we've worked with your firm where we've come in and we've provided claim support, as we call it, and we have a critical eye as to what's been damaged, what does it take to correct? Do the materials still exist to match?
Yep.
What's the timeline associated with this correction? These are the things that need to be quantified, right? How long will these amenities or this area of the building not be in use? How does that negatively impact the quality of life with the residents of that condominium association? And how do we get this back up and running as quickly as possible? So understanding the damage, understanding what it takes to fix, generating estimates to do all of the above, creating an overall budget, an overall estimate of the cost associated with these repairs is key. And it's not just for the hard cost of construction, it's also for the soft costs that are associated with these repairs, right? What design professionals need to be brought to the equation? What consultants need to be brought to the equation? What about permitting? What about insurances? What about protection? All these types of ancillary costs, which most associations unfortunately overlook. That is what firms like us and firms like yourself really keep a critical eye out for, because all of that takes time and all of it costs money. And at the end of the day, the association should not be on the hook for any of it.
Right. No, 100%, James. I mean, great information, and and James is a resource. I know DSS is out there. They're working with many associations. I encourage all of you to check them out online. So how can this audience get in contact with DSS and you, James?
You could either call 305-985-3772, or you could just look us up online, right? DSScondo.com, and there's within our website, there's you have the ability to click on certain prompts, which will put you in touch with any of our key personnel.
Well, James, I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Tremendous amount of great information. We're going to make sure that this broadcast is available on our YouTube channel, all the social media, and obviously share it with your team over there, so you guys can share it as well, because I think this is a really important issue as we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in our market right now. It's something that if you're a new board member or an existing board member, it doesn't matter. These are evolving situations, and we want to make sure that you have the actual real information you can use. Again, James, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Dan. Much appreciated. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Well, there you go, folks. Thank you so much for joining us here today with James and his team at DSS. Awesome information. I'm really, really impressed with their team, the things that they've done for community associations and our marketplace here. I've seen it firsthand myself. There's a lot of opportunity out there with others. They got great competition as well, but just make sure that you're getting someone credible. You're getting someone like DSS, if not DSS themselves. I totally encourage you guys to reach out. Let them take a look at your project. They can help you navigate these things if you're making improvements. We're seeing a big influx of people come down here. We want that new shiny toy. We want the property to look great. You want to attract those buyers. You want to see your property values go up. They can make all that happen for you. there's a lot of information to unpack as it relates to nearby construction and damages that may come to your projects and things you can do up front, but there's a lot of things and pitfalls to it too. So be wary of it. Take your time through the process. We are a resource to you. Make sure you have an insurance professional like GlobalPro on your side that understands the implications of any sort of agreements that you may enter into. It's really important that you have a credible team around you, and that's why we want to have people like James and DSS on here to talk about these important issues that are impacting us here in our market. Whether it's Florida, New York, New Jersey, Texas, Washington, D.C., we have offices located in areas where they're seeing tremendous growth and opportunity, and things are changing. It's the evolving situation. So make sure you continue to tune in. As if you have been tuning in, you know we've been talking about it. We are celebrating our 10 years. We are headed up to that anniversary date, and we are going to be celebrating it all year round to tell you our story about what it's taken to get us to where we are. We're going to talk about things that might not have worked. We're going to talk about things we've done with the community, which is a tremendous part of the culture here at GlobalPro. We are always finding ways to give back. There's so many stories to tell there. We were just trying to find some of the highlights, and the conversation lasted several days to pick just the videos and the pictures and the situations we wanted to show you guys, to demonstrate to you and what we do for our community when there is a major disaster. And it took us a tremendous effort to sift through all of it, and I couldn't be any more proud. It was really an awesome opportunity to reflect, and that's what this is about. That's what this year's about, is reflecting on the last 9 or so years, heading into 10, about what it's taken to get there. It's a tremendous milestone in any business. For us, it's something we are going to celebrate. It's an opportunity for us to engage our clientele. It's our opportunity to engage vendors like DSS to talk about situations that have led us to our success. And we hope you continue to tune in. We hope you subscribe to our YouTube page, like us, follow us on all the social media platforms. You need this information, whether you're a board member, a business owner, high net worth individual. This is the information you need in order to deal with insurance. And as insurance rates continue to skyrocket, as the policies, while they cost more, they have less in them. They're harder to they're much more harder to navigate. They're more complex. The courts are creating confusion with regards to these issues, whether or not these losses related to the pandemic are covered. There's state law, there's the federal courts, there's all kinds of different things that go into it, and we are discussing those issues here. So that's why we want you to tune in every single week. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. And again, I want to thank DSS and James for providing us an awesome broadcast and all that great information, and all of you for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report Live.